Nicaragua's economy is focused primarily on the agricultural sector. It is the least developed country in Central America, and the second poorest in the Americas by nominal GDP. In recent years, under the administrations of Daniel Ortega, the Nicaraguan economy has increased dramatically, although it has also been subject to the global recession. The country's economy actually contracted by 1.5% in 2009, due to decreased export demand in the U.S. and Central American markets, lower commodity prices for key agricultural exports, and low remittance growth, but saw 4.5% growth in 2010 thanks to a recovery in export demand and growth in its tourism industry. Nicaragua's economy continues to post growth, with preliminary indicators showing the Nicaraguan economy growing an additional 5% in 2011. Consumer price inflation have also curtailed since 2008, when Nicaragua's inflation rate hovered at 19.82%. In 2009 and 2010, the country posted lower inflation rates, 3.68% and 5.45%, respectively. Remittances are a major source of income, equivalent to 15% of the country's GDP, which originate primarily from Costa Rica, the United States, and European Union member states. Approximately 1 million Nicaraguans contribute to the remittance sector of the economy. In early 2004, Nicaragua secured some $4.5 billion in foreign debt reduction under the International Monetary Fund and World Bank Heavily Indebted Poor Countries initiative. In April 2006, the U.S. Central America Free Trade Agreement went into effect, expanding export opportunities for Nicaragua's agricultural and manufactured goods. Textiles and apparel account for nearly 60% of Nicaragua's exports. In October 2007, the IMF approved an additional poverty reduction and growth facility program in support of the government's economic plans. Nicaragua relies on international economic assistance to meet internal and external debt financing obligations, although foreign donors curtailed this funding in response to widespread allegations of electoral fraud in Nicaragua's November 2008 elections. Economic history. Nicaragua's economy was devastated in the 1980s by the Contra War, which saw the destruction of much of the country's infrastructure. At the same time, the U.S. staged an economic blockade from 1985 onward. Following the Civil War, Nicaragua began free market reforms, privatizing more than 350 state companies and commencing a general trend of economic growth. Inflation has been reduced from a high of 33,603% during the early years of the Sandinista period to more normal levels, averaging an annual rate of 9.5% over the 2000 to 2010 decade. Growth was slow in 2001 due to a combination of factors, and in 2009 the economy actually contracted 1.5% in reaction to the 2008 to 2012 global recession. But even with the recessions, growth has averaged 3.4% between 2001 and 2011. Economy. Unemployment is officially 3.8%. Nicaragua suffers from persistent trade and budget deficits and a high debt service burden, leaving it highly dependent on foreign assistance, which represented almost 25% of GDP in 2001. One of the key engines of economic growth has been production for export, although traditional products such as coffee, meat, and sugar continue to lead the list of Nicaraguan exports. The fastest growth is now in non-traditional exports, textile and apparel, gold, seafood, and new agricultural products such as peanuts, sesame, melons, and onions. In 2007, exports topped $1 billion US for the first time in Nicaraguan history. Nicaragua is primarily an agricultural country, but construction, mining, fisheries, and general commerce also have been expanding during the last few years. Foreign private capital inflows topped $300 million in 1999 but, due to economic and political uncertainty, fell to less than $100 million in 2001. In the last 12 years, tourism has grown 394%. The rapid growth has led it to become Nicaragua's second-largest source of foreign capital. Less than 3 years ago, the nation's tourism budget was US $400,000. Today, it is over $2 million. Nicaragua's economy has also produced a construction boom, the majority of which is in and around Managua. Nicaragua faces a number of challenges in stimulating rapid economic growth. An International Monetary Fund program is currently being followed, with the aim of attracting investment, creating jobs, and reducing poverty by opening the economy to foreign trade. This process was boosted in late 2000 when Nicaragua reached the decision point under the heavily indebted Poor Countries Debt Relief Initiative. However, HIPC benefits were delayed because Nicaragua subsequently fell off track from its IMF program. The country also has been grappling with a string of bank failures that began in August 2000. Moreover, Nicaragua continues to lose international reserves due to its growing fiscal deficits. The country is still a recovering economy and it continues to implement further reforms, on which aid from the IMF is conditional. In 2005, finance ministers of the leading 8 industrialized nations agreed to forgive some of Nicaragua's foreign debt as part of the HIPC program. According to the World Bank, Nicaragua's GDP was around $4.90 billion. Recently, in March 2007, Poland and Nicaragua signed an agreement to write off $30.6 million which was borrowed by the Nicaraguan government in the 1980s. The U.S. is the country's largest trading partner, providing 25% of Nicaragua's imports and receiving about 60% of its exports. About 25 wholly or partly owned subsidiaries of U.S. companies operate in Nicaragua. The largest of those investments are in the energy, communications, manufacturing, fisheries, and shrimp farming sectors. Good opportunities exist for further investments in those same sectors, as well as in tourism, mining, franchising, and the distribution of imported consumer, manufacturing, and agricultural goods. There are also copper mines in northeastern Nicaragua. Gross domestic products in purchasing power parity in 2012 was estimated at $20.04 billion USD, and GDP per capita in PPP at $3,300 USD, making Nicaragua the second poorest country in the Western Hemisphere. The service sector is the largest component of GDP at 56.7%, followed by the industrial sector at 25.8%. Agriculture represents 17.5% of GDP and it's the largest percentage in a Central American country. Nicaraguan labor force is estimated at 2.961 million, of which 28% is occupied in agriculture, 19% in the industry sector and 53% in the service sector. Agriculture and food production. Coffee became Nicaragua's principal crop in the 1870s. A position it still held in 1992 despite the growing importance of other crops. Cotton gained importance in the late 1940s, and in 1992 was the second biggest export earner. In the early 20th century, Nicaraguan governments were reluctant to give concessions to the large United States banana companies, and bananas never attained the level of prominence in Nicaragua that they reached in Nicaragua's Central American neighbors. Bananas were grown in the country, however, and were generally the third largest export earner in the post-World War II period. Beef and animal byproducts. The most important agricultural export for the 3 centuries before the coffee boom of the late 19th century were still important commodities in 1992. From the end of World War II to the early 1960s, the growth and diversification of the agricultural sector drove the nation's economic expansion. From the early 1960s until the increased fighting in 1977 caused by the Sandinista Revolution, agriculture remained a robust and significant part of the economy, although its growth slowed somewhat in comparison with the previous post-war decades. Statistics for the next 15 years, however, show stagnation and then a drop in agricultural production. The agricultural sector declined precipitously in the 1980s. Until the late 1970s, Nicaragua's agricultural export system generated 40% of the country's GDP, 60% of national employment, and 80% of foreign exchange earnings. Throughout the 1980s, the Contras destroyed or disrupted coffee harvests as well as other key income-generating crops. Private industry stopped investing in agriculture because of uncertain returns. Land was taken out of production of export crops to expand plantings of basic grain. Many coffee plants succumbed to disease. In 1989, the fifth successive year of decline, farm production declined by roughly 7% in comparison with the previous year. Production of basic grains fell as a result of Hurricane Joan in 1988 and a drought in 1989. By 1990, agricultural exports had declined to less than half the level of 1978. The only bright spot was the production of non-traditional export crops such as sesame, tobacco, and African palm oil. Services. The service sector was estimated to account for 56.8% of the country's GDP, and employs 52% of the active population. This section includes transportation, commerce, warehousing, restaurant and hotels, arts and entertainment, health, education, financial and banking services, telecommunications as well as public administration and defense. Tourism in Nicaragua is one of the most important industries in the country. It is the second largest source of foreign exchange for the country and is predicted to become the first largest industry in 2007. The growth in tourism has positively affected the agricultural, commercial, finance, and construction industries as well. Current economic outlook. Nicaragua has transformed itself into one of the safest and fastest-growing countries in Latin America. A stable, multi-party democracy, Nicaragua has ratified free trade agreements with major markets such as the United States, the Dominican Republic, Taiwan and Mexico, among others. As evidence of continuous efforts in improving the business climate, Nicaragua has been ranked favorably in a variety of independent evaluations. The 2011 Doing Business report, published by the World Bank Group, a report that benchmarks various indicators of the investment climate in 183 nations, ranked Nicaragua as the top location in Central America in starting a business, investor protection, and closing a business. Additionally, the country improved in the following categories: ease of doing business, registering property, paying taxes, trading across borders and enforcing contracts. Other statistics. Household income or consumption by percentage share. Lowest 10%. 1.4%, highest 10%, 41.8% industrial production growth rate, 2.4% electricity production, 2.778 billion kWh electricity production by source, fossil fuel, 53.43%, hydro, 35.34%, nuclear, 0%, other, 11.23% electricity consumption, 2.929 billion kWh electricity exports, 69.34 million kWh electricity imports, 0 kilowatt-hours agriculture products. Coffee, bananas, sugarcane, cotton, rice, corn, tobacco, sesame, soya, beans, beef, veal, pork, poultry, dairy products, shrimp, lobsters exports, commodities, coffee, beef, shrimp and lobster, cotton, tobacco, beef, peanuts, sugar, bananas, gold imports, commodities, consumer goods, machinery and equipment, raw materials, petroleum products. Currency. 1 gold Cordoba equals 100 centavos. Exchange rates. Gold Cordoba per $1 17.582, 16.733, 15.937, 15.105, 14.251. Price inflation. 2007, 16.88%, 2008, 13.37%.